There we go, Andy, you are live.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Bolton. Thank you so much for accept our interview request.
If the book gets out, he's broken the law, and I would think that he would have criminal problems.
John Bolton çok ciddi bir yanlış yapmıştır. Kim bu şekilde düşünüyorsa onlar da yanlış içerisinde.
Mr. John Bolton, around the world, talking about your book, and also I read your book. Your book gives us many clues about Trump administration and United States policy. You mentioned Turkey 135 times, and this is a huge number for your book. What makes Turkey special?
Well, there were a number of issues that involved Turkey in very significant ways during my time as National Security Advisor, and so I thought it was appropriate to explain what the issues were and what Turkey's position was. We had Pastor Brunson being held in jail and then ultimately released. We had the question of Syria and a number of other issues in the Middle East. So these were very important questions, and that explains it.
In your period, many important issues, as you said, discussed between Turkey and United States. For example, Halkbank, Pastor Brunson, Syria operation, and Güvenlik Group. I want to start with Güvenlik Group. We recognize them as a terrorist organization, but you mentioned them in your book, Islamic Teacher. Why you recognize them as a teacher? They also try coup attempt. Why you say that as a teacher?
President Erdogan has repeated many times he and the Turkish government presented materials to the U.S. government over time, and in pursuance of their request to have Gülen extradited to Turkey, but the information simply didn't arise to that level. We've had no indication of any illegitimate behavior in the United States, and so that's why Gülen has not been extradited.
ABD'den iadesini istediğimiz kişilerin listesini de rica etmişti. O listeyi hem Bolton'a hem de Pompeo'ya vermiş olduk.
Did you ask information about Gülen from the intelligence, for example, CIA or FBI?
Well, I wouldn't get into that. I know that on a number of occasions the Turkish government provided us with information, but as I say, it was not sufficient to make out a case for extradition.
Why they cannot convince you?
As I say, this is something that was basically turned over to our Department of Justice, which obviously through the FBI and Justice itself look at possible violations of American law and extradition request, and it was their judgment it didn't rise to a level sufficient to meet the legal standards that were applied.
What about Donald Trump? What he thinking about this group?
Well, I don't think he knows that much about Fethullah Gülen or the Gülenist movement in education around the world. I don't think that's anything he's ever really studied that carefully.
What is relationship between Halkbank and Erdogan?
Well, I mean, it's been in the public press that Erdogan and his family have a lot of dealings with Halkbank. That was not a factor in the decision by the Justice Department to prosecute Halkbank. But I think we believed it probably explained a lot of why Erdogan and his family were so concerned about what happened to the guy.
Why Trump is making favor for Erdogan? How he can convince Trump?
Well, Erdogan wanted the prosecution of Halkbank dropped, and ultimately, although Trump seemed to be, well, he was willing to consider it, he was ultimately persuaded by the Justice Department that the prosecution should go ahead, which is now underway in court in New York, in federal court.
How is Erdogan putting pressure on Trump?
Well, I don't think he put pressure on Trump because of Halkbank. I think he met with him, spoke with him on a number of occasions about it, and tried to persuade him to stop the charges against Halkbank. But ultimately that that didn't happen. At least it hasn't happened yet.
Why Berat Albayrak and Jared Kushner are meeting about Halkbank case? You mentioned it in your book also.
Well, that was what somebody called the son-in-law channel, because the finance minister is the president's son-in-law, and they talked about a number of issues. There were conversations that were had about finding a way to resolve the case satisfactorily for Erdogan, but it was eventually concluded there was no way we could do that consistent with U.S. law.
Do you have any surprises you most of about Halkbank case or about Turkey relationship with the United States?
Well, I think the thing that surprised me the most was Erdogan's decision to buy Russian S-400 air defense systems.
Savunma sistemi noktasında biz adımlarımızı niye atmayalım? Ve bunun için de tuttuk Rusya'yla bu anlaşmayı yaptık. S-400 konusunda adımlarımızı attık. Ve şu anda bizim S-400 ile ilgili bir geri dönüşümüz falan söz konusu değil. S-400 ile ilgili biz adımımızı atmış vaziyette.
Amerika'dan çok tehditkar açıklamalar yine gelince.
Ne gelirse gelsin canım.
Which I think are inconsistent with Turkey's commitments to NATO. Certainly, it made it impossible for the United States to sell the F-35s to Turkey, or to allow Turkey to remain in the F-35 production supply chain. It will call at some point for sanctions to be imposed on Turkey as a result of that purchase if it's not reversed. And I think it means the withholding of other sales of sophisticated military equipment. I don't understand to this day why anybody in Turkey would want to buy a Russian air defense system. And I hope it doesn't mean that Turkey's commitment to the NATO alliance it has been reduced. I think it's a decision that Erdogan made. I don't think it necessarily reflects where the people of Turkey are, and I don't understand why Erdogan has continued to insist that he wants the S-400.
Do you think that Turkey will take the F-35 in the future?
Well, as long as this S-400 contract remains in effect, and I think components of the S-400 system have been delivered in Turkey, I think they need to be sent back to Russia. The contract needs to be canceled. And then a lot of things could be considered. But I think there's also, there has to be a conversation with Turkey on just how committed it is to the NATO alliance going forward. And I think that's very important, not just for the United States, but for countries in Europe as well. Look, the Russians, for centuries, have looked at the Dardanelles and the Bosporus as keeping them bottled up in the Black Sea. And they've been after exit routes into warm waters for literally hundreds of years. So Turkey's geographic position is hugely important to Moscow. And if they can split Turkey away from NATO, it would be a big plus for Russia. I don't understand why the leadership of Turkey would play that game with Moscow. And I think there ought to be a conversation with the government of Turkey, and maybe it's after Erdogan leaves power, about whether Turkey really wants to be part of the Western alliance or not.
Do you believe that future between NATO allies, Turkey and United States, maybe get in conflict in future?
As I say, my understanding of where public opinion in Turkey is that they don't want to split in the NATO alliance. Mm-hmm. I think it's Erdogan's own view and the policies that he's espoused that are driving the wedge between Turkey and the NATO alliance. And we'll see if Turkey remains a democracy, which obviously I hope it will. The people will ultimately get a chance to express their views. In recent local elections in cities around the country, the Erdogan's opponents were successful. Now, I think that's as much due to economic issues as anything else. These were local elections. But at the national election level, I hope somebody would say Turkey should remain firmly committed to the NATO alliance and make that an election issue.
So, does the United States want to establish a Kurdish state in Syria and Iraq?
Well, the position of the United States, the official position, is there should not be a Kurdish state. My own personal view is that Iraq is largely failed as a country. I don't see how you put the country back together again. I don't see the Sunni Arabs being willing to go back into a country dominated by the Shia Arabs and with heavy influence from Iran. And I don't see the Kurds willing to go back into Iraq at all. So because my concern, and I think the major threat to international peace and security in the Middle East as a whole, is Iranian efforts at hegemony, not just the nuclear weapons program, not just their support for terrorism, but what they're doing now in Iraq and Syria and Lebanon through Hezbollah, basically to dominate those three other countries. And, you know, dealing with that is an argument to say if the Kurds can create a viable state in northern Iraq and part of Syria, that may be a bulwark against continued Iranian influence. And my focus is on Iran as much as anything, but the Kurds are de facto independent in northern Iraq now, and I don't know what's going to change that, honestly.
You are one of those responsible for Iraq war. Do you regret about it? Innocent people died in Iraq, even United States soldiers.
Which Iraq war are we talking about? The first one or the second one?
Second one.
Well, okay, but the second one derives from the first, and in fact, I think you can see now Brent Scowcroft, who was National Security Advisor during the Bush 41 administration, gave interviews to the University of Virginia that he said could only be released upon his death. And those interviews have now been published. And he said we should have done more to see Saddam overthrown at the end of the first Gulf War. And in fact, Saddam was a threat to international peace and security in the region, and his removal from power, in my view, remains a positive outcome. Where I think the Iraq policy went wrong was in the aftermath of the overthrow of Saddam, and the United States being involved in the Coalition Provisional Authority, when I think we probably should have returned power to Iraqis themselves much more quickly. So I think there are a lot of things you could say about the aftermath of the war, but overthrowing Saddam Hussein for a whole host of reasons that we don't have time to talk about here because of my time constraints, I think was the right thing to do. I continue to believe. And I think it was accomplished with the absolute minimal loss of life because of the coalition invasion of Iraq.
Pastor Brunson, at the first point, Turkey did not realize him, and after Erdogan realized him, what happened there?
We think Pastor Brunson, in effect, was used as a hostage by Erdogan. It's why Trump imposed sanctions on Turkey. He was a religious figure, and that's all, and had no connection with any political activity inside Turkey. So his apprehension and the charges against him were false to begin with.
Erdogan how changed his mind to realize him, because you know that third month he is in jail, Brunson, and after that just he realized and get his back his country. Always happened. Trump treat him or something.
The sanctions that were imposed on Turkey were driving the currency value down very substantially. So I think Turkey was hurt by that, hurt by tariffs on steel and aluminum. And I think Erdogan realized that this was going to end badly for Turkey, and so they figured out a way to allow Brunson to be released.
This is the last part of my interview. This is just need a short answers, yes or not. Maybe you just give me just one sentence, okay? Do you think we work for Biden campaign?
I'm not supporting Biden. I don't support Trump either. Under our system, I will write in the name of somebody else, but I won't vote for either one of them.
What do you think about Erdogan's character? Is he an important world leader?
Well, I don't think he's a world leader. I think as an outside observer, it looks to me like he's trying to change the Kemalist constitutional structure in Turkey, change the secular nature of the Turkish state. You know, in a democracy, you can change your constitution, but I don't think that's where the majority of the Turkish people are.
So, Ibrahim Kalın?
Well, I think he's very competent, and I think I've had lots of conversations with him on lots of subjects. He's very professional, and was a strong advocate for Turkey.
And this picture, can you see that, this picture?
Yes.
It's many discussed in Turkey, may you know that. What happened in this picture? Can you tell us?
Well, I don't know. We were having a discussion after a meeting, and you know, it looks like Ibrahim Kalın is lecturing me on something, so maybe he liked that picture.
And what was your most difficult issues in relationship with Turkey?
Well, I think the S-400 remains the most difficult issue, and it needs to be resolved. I think Turkey needs to give this weapon system back to Russia.
Why you didn't come forward sooner?
Well, I explained many of the reasons for it in the book. You know, I never received a subpoena by the House of Representatives. The Senate voted not to hear new witnesses. And I think the Democrats badly mismanaged the impeachment process. I called it impeachment malpractice. So it was just not possible to explain what I thought needed to be explained in the course of the impeachment. But I think bringing the book out in the middle of a presidential election campaign allows people to read the book, and they can draw their own conclusions.
This is my last question. If Joe Biden will elected in United States, what will be happen in United States and Turkey relationship?
Well, I don't think he's articulated a position with respect to some of the issues we've talked about today, so I don't really know, but I don't think he can duck the S-400 question. And, you know, they've been very critical of Trump for being too favorable to Russia. So this is one where I think Biden might actually have the same view that I do.
Okay, thank you so much, John Bolton.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Dalton musun, Dalton musun bilmem. Ama şunu açıkça sorarım. Türkiye bağımsız ve egemen bir devlet olarak neyi nasıl yapacağını sana ve patronlarına mı soracaksın? Bu ne küstahlıktır? Nasıl bir terbiyesizliktir?